Daniel often told himself that stability was the reward of love, though lately it felt more like a slow erosion. At 26, he lived in a modest apartment with Michael, his partner of 4 years, and from the outside, their life seemed well arranged, two men sharing expenses, meals, and the rhythms of ordinary commitment. Yet inside Daniel there lingered an emptiness, a space that routine could not fill. On a gray Saturday afternoon, with rain drumming steadily against the windows, Daniel decided to step out for groceries. Michael was napping on the couch, his arm dangling over the side, mouth slightly open. Daniel paused, watching him, then slipped on his jacket without a word. He longed for fresh air, or perhaps simply for a reason to be elsewhere. The streets glistened with shallow puddles, and Daniel kept his hood up as he walked toward a small corner shop 2 blocks away. He had passed it many times but rarely entered, favoring the larger supermarket downtown. Today, though, something nudged him toward the narrow glass door with its hand-painted sign, Ethan's Market. Inside, the air smelled of coffee beans and fresh bread. Wooden shelves lined the walls, stacked neatly with produce and essentials. The shop was quiet, save for the faint hum of a radio. Behind the counter stood a man Daniel had never properly noticed before. Ethan, the shopkeeper, looked to be in his early 30s, with dark hair pushed back carelessly and sleeves rolled above his elbows. His presence seemed calm, unhurried, as if he belonged entirely to the space. Daniel took a basket and wandered the aisles, collecting bread, apples, and a bag of coffee. The rain outside softened into a background rhythm, almost lulling. When he reached the counter, he set down his items and began patting his pockets. A sudden dread washed over him. His wallet wasn't there. I'm so sorry, Daniel stammered, cheeks flushing. I must have left my wallet at home. I'll put these back. Ethan shook his head, a small smile curving his lips. No need. Take them. You can settle up another time. Daniel blinked, uncertain. Really? I don't want to cause trouble. It's no trouble, Ethan replied easily, sliding the bread into a paper bag. Happens more often than you'd think. Consider it a favor. The ease in Ethan's tone unsettled Daniel in a curious way. He had expected irritation, perhaps even suspicion, but instead he was met with warmth. Their eyes held for a moment longer than politeness required, and Daniel felt something stir, a sensation both exhilarating and disquieting. That he took the bag, murmured a thank you, and made for the door, but Ethan's voice followed him. Next time, just bring your smile. The words were light, almost teasing, yet they landed heavily in Daniel's chest. He nodded quickly, leaving before his expression betrayed too much. Outside, the rain had eased into mist. Daniel walked home slowly, the bag warm in his hands, his thoughts unsettled. Why had Ethan's kindness felt so personal? Why had those words, "Bring your smile," echoed louder than they should? When he reached the apartment, Michael was still asleep, the television murmuring faintly in the background. Daniel placed the groceries on the counter and noticed something tucked between the apples, a folded slip of paper. His pulse quickened as he opened it. In Ethan's tidy handwriting were the same words spoken at the door, "Next time, just bring your smile." Daniel stared at the note, heat rushing through him. It was harmless, perhaps even a playful courtesy, yet he felt compelled to hide it. He slipped the paper into his jacket pocket just as Michael stirred awake in the other room. Later that evening, as Michael chattered about a movie he wanted to watch, Daniel nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. The note seemed to burn against his chest, demanding attention. He replayed the moment in the shop, the way Ethan's gaze lingered, the softness in his tone. For the first time in months, Daniel felt something alive within him, a spark that routine had smothered. That night, lying in bed beside Michael, he could not sleep. His partner's steady breathing was a reminder of the life they had built, predictable, loyal, familiar. Yet Daniel's mind refused to quiet. He saw Ethan's smile, heard his words, and felt an ache that was both thrilling and dangerous. That he turned on his side, eyes open to the dark, and whispered to himself a truth he dared not admit aloud: "I haven't felt this in years." The rain resumed outside, soft and unrelenting, as though the night itself was urging him to remember. Daniel told himself he would not return to Ethan's shop so soon. It was just a corner store, nothing more. Yet a week later, with no pressing need for groceries, he found himself walking in that direction. Michael had suggested they spend the afternoon together, but Daniel invented an errand, something about needing more coffee. The lie was small, but the guilt stung sharper than expected. The bell above the shop door jingled as he entered. Ethan was arranging fruit at the front display, his hands moving with practiced ease. He looked up, and his smile came quickly, as though he had been waiting. "Wallet this time?" Ethan teased, straightening. Daniel chuckled awkwardly. "Safely in my pocket." He produced it from his jacket, proof against the embarrassment of last time. They spoke casually at first, the weather, the quietness of the neighborhood. Yet as Daniel browsed, he realized he was less interested in the shelves than in the shopkeeper's voice. Ethan had a way of speaking that felt unhurried, attentive, as though he placed value in each exchange. Michael's words at home had grown clipped, predictable, drained of spark. Here, Daniel felt animated, even witty. When Daniel brought a few items to the counter, Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I noticed you like this blend of coffee. Strong choice. Keeps you awake during long nights." "Something like that," Daniel answered, surprised at the attention to detail. "You notice a lot." "I try," Ethan said softly, meeting his gaze. The moment stretched, until Daniel broke it by reaching for his wallet. Yet even in that simple act, his pulse raced. Later that week, Rain returned to the city. Daniel, restless after dinner, slipped out again, claiming he wanted fresh air. He walked with purpose, heart thudding as he reached Ethan's shop. The lights glowed warmly against the wet street. Inside, the shop was nearly empty. Ethan was behind the counter, reading a book, but he set it aside immediately. "You again," he said, with a tone that carried both humor and welcome. Daniel shook Rain from his hair. "Seems I'm becoming a regular." "No complaints here," Ethan replied. "Sit for a while. Storm's not letting up soon." Daniel hesitated but accepted. Ethan poured them both cups of tea from a small pot he kept behind the counter. The gesture felt intimate, almost domestic. They spoke of their lives, Ethan about taking over the store after his parents passed, Daniel about his job at a design firm that often left him uninspired. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, each confession drawing them closer. At one point, Ethan laughed, leaning across the counter, his hand brushing Daniel's as he passed the cup. The contact was fleeting, almost accidental, yet Daniel felt it like a spark along his skin. He didn't pull away. A silence followed, filled only by the rain tapping the windows. Daniel's thoughts tangled, loyalty to Michael, the pull of this forbidden energy, the longing for connection he hadn't admitted even to himself. "You ever feel," Ethan said carefully, "like life is meant to be more than routines and responsibilities?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Every day." Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat neither moved. Then Ethan drew back slightly, clearing his throat. "I shouldn't say things like that. You have someone waiting for you at home." Daniel nodded, though his heart screamed otherwise. "Yes. I do." Yet he remained seated, unwilling to end the moment. The rain outside gave them cover, as if the world itself had paused. Eventually, Daniel stood, reluctant. "I should go." Ethan nodded, but his expression betrayed conflict. As Daniel reached the door, Ethan's voice stopped him. "I like seeing you here, Daniel. More than I should." The words landed with the weight of confession. Daniel turned, his breath caught, but he found no reply. He simply nodded and stepped into the rain, his chest aching with contradictions. At home, Michael greeted him with casual warmth, asking about the walk. Daniel smiled faintly, offering vague answers. But his thoughts lingered on Ethan's words, on the tremor of desire they carried. That night, Daniel lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail, the brush of a hand, the glimmer in Ethan's eyes, the forbidden thrill pulsing beneath their conversations. He felt guilty, yet alive. For the first time, Daniel admitted what he feared most: he was teetering on the edge of something that could change everything. By the end of the following week, Daniel felt as though his thoughts were split between two lives. In one, he was the devoted partner who came home on time, shared dinners with Michael, and carried on the habits they had built together. In the other, he was restless, drawn irresistibly toward the corner shop and the man who seemed to see him more clearly than anyone else. Each day he told himself he would resist the pull. Each night he lay awake, imagining what would happen if he didn't. The decision came one evening without planning. Michael suggested they watch a film, but Daniel felt suffocated by the familiarity of it all, the same couch, the same laughter, the same silence. He excused himself with a lie about needing air and stepped into the cool night. His steps carried him with purpose toward Ethan's Market, though he hardly admitted it to himself until the warm glow of the windows appeared at the end of the street. The sign on the door read closed, yet a faint light spilled from within. Daniel hesitated, hand hovering over the glass, then knocked softly. For a moment, nothing. Then Ethan appeared, surprise flickering across his features before giving way to something gentler. "Daniel," he said, unlocking the door. "What are you doing here so late?" "I don't know," Daniel confessed. I couldn't stay home tonight." Ethan studied him, then stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the shop was hushed, stripped of the day's bustle. Shelves stood in orderly rows, and the air carried the faint scent of coffee grounds. Daniel felt the weight of the silence, heavier than words. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms folded. "This is dangerous, you know." "I know." Daniel's voice was low, almost trembling. "But I can't stop thinking about you." The admission hung in the air, stark and irretrievable. Ethan's expression shifted, conflict warring with desire. He stepped closer, so close Daniel could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the uncertainty in his eyes. "I told myself not to feel this," Ethan murmured. "But every time you walk through that door," he broke off, shaking his head. Daniel closed the space between them, his heart hammering. "Then don't stop." The first kiss came tentative, almost questioning, but the moment their lips touched, hesitation dissolved. Heat surged between them, urgent and undeniable. Daniel felt the world shrink to the press of Ethan's mouth, the steady grip of his hand at Daniel's waist. It was reckless, intoxicating, a release of everything Daniel had kept locked away. They drew apart only slightly, breathing hard, foreheads resting together. "This feels wrong," Ethan whispered. "But God, it feels right too." Daniel swallowed, torn between guilt and hunger. "I don't want to hurt him. But with you, I feel alive again." For a while they stood there, the shop a cocoon around them, the storm outside tapping faintly at the windows. No grand declarations followed, no promises of forever, just the raw truth of two men colliding at the edge of restraint. Eventually Daniel stepped back, his chest tight. "I should go," he said, though every part of him resisted. Ethan nodded, eyes shadowed. "Take care of yourself, Daniel." The words were simple, but the weight in them lingered. Walking home, Daniel felt both elated and crushed. The memory of the kiss burned on his lips, while guilt gnawed at his conscience. When he entered the apartment, Michael was waiting on the couch, smiling warmly. "Back already? I saved you a spot." Daniel forced a smile and sat beside him, his heart pounding. Michael leaned into him, unsuspecting, while Daniel stared at the screen without seeing it. The distance between what he showed and what he felt had never been greater. Later, in bed, Daniel lay awake once more. The apartment was quiet, Michael breathing steadily beside him. But Daniel's mind was alive with conflict, torn between loyalty and longing, between the life he knew and the dangerous possibility unfolding in secret. That he closed his eyes, whispering to the darkness a truth that terrified him. "It all started with a simple shopping trip without money. But what I truly couldn't afford was the price of desire." The night held him in silence, offering no answers, only the echo of a choice already made. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, casting pale stripes across the bedroom. Daniel lay on his side, pretending to sleep as Michael dressed quietly for work. Every sound, the click of a belt, the rustle of a shirt, felt sharper than usual, amplified by the guilt that throbbed inside him. He had kissed another man, and no amount of silence could erase it. Michael leaned down and brushed a soft kiss on Daniel's forehead. "See you tonight," he whispered, unaware of the storm in Daniel's chest. The door closed, leaving Daniel alone in the apartment, for a long while he lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. The kiss with Ethan replayed in his mind, vivid and electric. It wasn't only the kiss, it was the way Ethan had looked at him, as if he were more than the sum of his routines. Daniel knew he should bury the memory, let it fade, but instead he clung to it, both tortured and enlivened. By noon, Daniel found himself standing outside Ethan's market again. The door was open, the morning rush long gone. He told himself he was there for groceries, but his empty basket betrayed the lie. Ethan noticed immediately. "You didn't come here for apples, did you?" he asked, voice low, wary yet warm. Daniel shook his head. "I shouldn't be here." "But you are," Ethan replied, stepping closer, though careful not to touch him. "And so am I." Their words lingered in the stillness, filling the space between honesty and restraint. Daniel forced himself to look away, to focus on the rows of fruit instead of the man who pulled at him with invisible threads. "I don't want to hurt Michael," Daniel said finally, his voice breaking slightly. "He trusts me completely." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then maybe we stop now, before it goes any further." Daniel nodded, but the ache in his chest only deepened. He picked up a bag of apples he didn't need, paid for them, and left. The restraint felt noble in theory, but as soon as he stepped into the street, he was already longing to turn back. That evening, Michael suggested they cook together. They chopped vegetables side by side, Michael humming tunelessly, his presence steady and familiar. Daniel tried to match the rhythm, tried to laugh at the right moments, but the effort felt heavy. He was present in body, absent in soul. When Michael leaned in to kiss him, Daniel returned it dutifully, yet the fire was missing. He closed his eyes, and Ethan's face appeared unbidden. He pulled back quickly, covering the slip with a smile. Days passed in this divided state. Daniel moved through his routines, work, meals, conversations, but underneath, his mind remained restless. Each time he crossed paths with Ethan, the tension grew sharper, the distance harder to maintain. They spoke less, as though silence might protect them, but their eyes told the truth their mouths could not. One late evening, Daniel sat alone on the balcony, the city humming softly below. Michael had gone to bed, exhausted from a long shift. Daniel lit a cigarette he didn't even enjoy, exhaling into the night as though smoke might carry away his confusion. That he thought of Ethan, of the kiss they had shared, of the restraint they had tried to practice. He wondered if he had already crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, even if nothing more ever happened. Infidelity wasn't only in action, he realized. Sometimes it lived in thought, in longing, in the stolen minutes replayed when no one was watching. As the cigarette burned low, Daniel whispered to the night, "I can't keep living split in two." The admission terrified him, yet it also offered clarity. He could no longer pretend this was a passing distraction. Something had been awakened in him, something that would not go quietly back to sleep. Inside, Michael stirred, calling softly for him. Daniel stubbed out the cigarette and returned indoors, his face composed, his heart in turmoil. The choice loomed, impossible to avoid. Whether he turned toward Michael or Ethan, someone would be hurt, and the life he knew would change, and though he dreaded that moment, part of him longed for it too.